The stars looked cold and distant through the cracked viewing window of the Vakreen flagship. Commander Thalos stood at his post, watching the damage report scroll across his screen. Every number told the same story. They were losing this fight, and they had been losing it for months. Behind the flagship, 29 other ships struggled to maintain formation. Some were military vessels, their hulls scarred from countless battles. Most were civilian transports packed far beyond their safe capacity with refugees. 30,000 Vakreen souls depended on these ships. 30,000 people who had already lost their homes, their worlds, everything they had built over generations. The Krell were coming. They had been coming for 3 months, chasing the Vakreen fleet across half the galaxy. Nobody knew why the Krell had attacked in the first place. The Vakreen had never done anything to provoke them. One day the Krell armada had simply appeared in orbit over the colony worlds and began firing. No warning, no demands, no explanation. Just destruction. Thalos had been a colony administrator before the war. He knew how to manage supply chains and resolve disputes between settlers. He had never wanted to be a military commander. But when the senior officers had died in the first attacks, someone had to step up. Someone had to try to save whoever they could. A warning alarm cut through his thoughts. His tactical officer, a young woman named Saris, looked up from her console with fear in her eyes. "Commander, they're here. 215 Krell warships just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Distance is 4 million kilometers and closing fast." Thalos felt his stomach drop. 200 ships. His tiny fleet could barely scratch that kind of firepower. Their jump drives were still damaged from the last engagement. They couldn't run, and they certainly couldn't fight. "Try to hail them again," Thalos said, knowing it was useless. "Maybe this time they'll talk to us." Saris worked her controls, but soon shook her head. "No response, sir. They're charging weapons." Around the bridge, the crew worked in silence. They had done this dance before. Everyone knew their roles. The civilian ships would cluster in the center, while the military vessels spread out to provide what little protection they could. It would buy them maybe an hour, maybe less. "Sir, I'm picking up something strange," the communications officer called out. His name was Vec, and he had worked as a civilian radio technician before the war. "There's a transmission coming in on an old frequency. It's in Galactic Common, but the accent is strange." "Put it through," Thalos ordered. Maybe it was another species. Maybe someone else who could help, though he didn't dare hope for much. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Thalos had heard before. It had a rough quality, confident and calm despite the situation. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Vessel Ranger. We have detected your distress and the hostile force pursuing you. We are moving to intercept. Hold your current position if you are able." Earth. The name stirred something in Thalos's memory. He had read about them in the galactic databases. Humans. They were the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel. They had only been in space for a few decades, still learning the basics of interstellar navigation and diplomacy. "Captain Morrison," Thalos replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "We thank you for your concern, but the enemy fleet consists of over 200 warships. Unless you have significant forces available, I strongly suggest you avoid engagement. These enemies show no mercy." There was a brief pause. Then Thalos heard a sound that might have been a laugh. "Commander, we have 12 ships in this sector, but don't worry about us. We didn't come out here unprepared." "Ranger out, 12 ships." Thalos closed his eyes and took a deep breath. These humans were going to die trying to help complete strangers. It was noble, perhaps even heroic, but it was also suicide. 12 ships against 200 was not a battle. It was a massacre waiting to happen. "Should we warn them again?" Saris asked quietly. Thalos shook his head. "They know the odds. If they're willing to buy us time with their lives, we have to use it. Try to get the jump drives back online. If we get even a few minutes, maybe we can save some of the civilian ships." The crew worked frantically, but Thalos knew it was hopeless. The jump drive repairs needed hours, not minutes. He watched the tactical display as the Krell fleet drew closer. Their ships were dark and menacing, built for one purpose only: destruction. Then new contacts appeared on the screen. 12 ships, just as Morrison had said. They were moving fast, taking up positions between the Vakreen fleet and the approaching Krell. Thalos studied their formations with a tactical eye. The human ships were spreading out in a wide defensive screen, positioning themselves to intercept the enemy advance. "They're smaller than I expected," Saris observed. Their designs are very different from standard galactic ship architecture. More angular, less elegant. They look like they were built in a factory, Vec added, not grown in fabrication matrices like our ships. Thalos had to agree. The human vessels had a crude industrial look to them. They bristled with weapons and thick armor plating. They looked tough, but tough wouldn't be enough against overwhelming numbers. Captain Morrison, please reconsider, Thalos said, making one last attempt. Your sacrifice will only delay the enemy temporarily. You don't need to die for us. Morrison's reply came back immediately. No sacrifice today, Commander. We're here to even the odds a bit. Ranger to all ships, weapons are free. Let's show these folks why you don't mess with refugees on our watch. The Krell fleet was in weapons range now. Thalos watched as they opened fire, sending bright lances of energy streaking across the void. These weapons could slice through standard hull plating like a knife through soft fruit. He braced himself to watch the human ships die. Instead, something impossible happened. The human vessels began to move in ways that shouldn't have been possible. They twisted and rolled, weaving through the incoming fire with precision that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Some shots hit their hulls, but the armor held, glowing white-hot but not breaking, and then the humans fired back. Railguns along their hulls opened up with streams of solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds. Missiles launched from tubes in coordinated waves. The Krell formation suddenly lit up with explosions as human weapons found their targets. Thalos stared at the tactical display in shock. Against all logic, against all reason, the humans were fighting back, and somehow, impossibly, they were holding the line. The battle unfolded like nothing Thalos had ever witnessed in his career. The 12 human ships moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. They didn't fly in straight lines or predictable patterns like most military craft. Instead, they danced through space, rolling and spinning in maneuvers that should have crushed their crews under massive gravitational forces. Ceres was frantically working her tactical console, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Commander, those acceleration curves don't make sense. The G-forces from those maneuvers should be lethal to any biological crew. They must have inertial dampening technology far beyond anything in our databases. Thalos watched as a human ship designated Hunter took 3 direct hits from Krell energy lances, the kind of hits that would have torn a Vacrine cruiser in half. The human vessel's armor glowed bright with absorbed energy. Sections of hull plating turned cherry red from the heat, but the ship kept fighting, its weapons never stopping their relentless assault. A Krell destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash of light. One of the human railgun slugs had punched straight through its shields and armor, finding the power core beneath. The shockwave from the explosion caught 2 other Krell ships, sending them spinning out of formation. Did you see that? Vec exclaimed. Those projectile weapons are incredibly effective. The Krell shields are designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid matter moving at those velocities. Thalos had to admit it was brilliant in its simplicity. The galaxy had spent thousands of years developing more and more sophisticated energy weapons and defensive shields. The humans had brought guns, old-fashioned primitive kinetic weapons that threw solid metal at relativistic speeds. And against all the advanced technology of the Krell, those simple weapons were devastatingly effective. Captain Morrison, Thalos called out over the open channel, your crews must be experiencing lethal levels of force from those maneuvers. How are they surviving? Morrison's voice came back steady and confident. We've got good inertial dampeners and better pilots, Commander. Lieutenant Sarah Banks is pulling 15 G-forces in the Falcon right now, and she's still got enough breath left to sing over the comm channel. Now, if you don't mind, we're a little busy at the moment. As if to prove his point, Thalos could hear music playing in the background of the transmission. It had a driving rhythm and what sounded like electric stringed instruments. The humans were actually listening to music while fighting for their lives. These people were absolutely insane, but there was method in their madness. Thalos began to notice patterns in how they fought. When a Krell ship focused its fire on one human vessel, 2 others would immediately move to support it, forcing the Krell to split their attention. They targeted weapon systems and engines with surgical precision, crippling enemy ships rather than destroying them outright. They're fighting smart, Ceres said with growing admiration. Every ship they disable becomes a problem for the Krell. They have to slow down to recover damaged vessels or leave their crews to die. Either way, it disrupts their formation and slows their advance. The Krell seemed to realize this too. They began to press harder, concentrating their fire on individual human ships. 4 Krell vessels surrounded the human ship called Defiant, and opened fire simultaneously. The Defiant's hull ruptured in multiple places, venting atmosphere and debris into the vacuum of space. Thalos felt his heart sink. Surely no crew could survive that kind of damage. Defiant to Ranger, "We're venting atmosphere, but hull integrity is holding at 30%. A woman's voice reported with remarkable calmness. "We still have main guns operational and 2 missile pods ready to fire." "Copy that, Defiant," Morrison responded. Lieutenant Karen Foster, "Get your people into emergency suits and fall back to secondary defensive positions. You've done excellent work out there." "Negative, Ranger. We still have fight left in us." Defiant is maintaining position in formation. The damaged human ship continued to fire, even as atmosphere streamed from its wounds like blood from an injured animal. Thalos realized something important about these humans. They simply did not give up. Even when logic said they should retreat, even when their ships were damaged and dying, they kept fighting. The battle had been raging for nearly 2 hours when a new voice joined the command frequency. This one was deeper, carrying the weight of experience and authority. "Ranger, this is Admiral Henry Cole aboard the Washington. Reinforcements have arrived. We're jumping in now." The space behind the human defensive line suddenly rippled and distorted. 20 more human ships emerged from faster-than-light travel, appearing in perfect formation. These vessels were larger than the first wave, more heavily armed, and they came in with all weapons firing. "Admiral Cole," Morrison said, and Thalos could hear the relief flooding through his voice. "You're a sight for sore eyes, sir. We got your distress relay, Captain. The 5th Fleet sends its regards to you and your crews. All ships, protect those refugees and push these bastards back where they came from." The tactical situation changed in an instant. The Krell fleet, which had been steadily pressing the attack despite taking heavy losses, suddenly found itself outnumbered. The human vessels moved with perfect coordination, their tactical network sharing targeting data and maneuver commands in real time. It was like watching a single mind controlling 32 bodies. "The Krell are breaking formation," Saris reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "They're pulling back. Commander, they're actually retreating." Thalos watched his tactical display with wonder. The enemy fleet that had chased them for 3 months, that had destroyed their worlds and killed millions of their people, was running away. The Krell ships were forming up for a withdrawal jump, abandoning the battlefield. The humans let them go. Their weapons fell silent as the last Krell vessel vanished into faster-than-light travel. For a long moment, there was only stunned silence on the bridge of the Vakrine flagship. "They did it," Vec whispered. "They actually did it." Thalos let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His hands were shaking. "Open a channel to Captain Morrison," he said quietly. The human ship Ranger maneuvered closer to the Vakrine flagship over the next several hours. Thalos watched through the viewing port as the vessel approached. Up close, he could see the battle damage more clearly. Long scorch marks ran along the hull where Krell energy weapons had struck. Several armor plates were buckled or missing entirely, but the ship was still functional, still ready to fight if needed. Saris coordinated the docking procedures while Thalos prepared to meet the humans face to face. He had read what little information the galactic databases contained about their species, but reading dry facts was different from actually meeting them. His hands were steady now, but he felt nervous in a way he hadn't felt in months. These beings had saved his people. What could he possibly say that would be adequate? The docking collar sealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure. A moment later, the airlock door opened and Captain Jake Morrison stepped through. He was shorter than Thalos had expected, standing perhaps a head below the commander's own height. His hair was dark with streaks of gray at the temples, and his eyes had a tired but alert quality to them. He wore a uniform of dark blue with insignia that marked his rank and ship assignment. 2 other humans accompanied him. One was a woman with sharp, intelligent features and commander's rank markings on her uniform. The other was a younger man carrying some kind of technical scanning equipment. "Commander Thalos," Morrison said, extending his hand in what the database had identified as a human greeting gesture. "It's good to meet you face to face. This is Commander Linda Hayes, my first officer, and Ensign Peter Grant from our damage assessment team." Thalos carefully mimicked the handshake, gripping Morrison's hand as he had seen in the database videos. The human's grip was firm but not aggressive. "Captain Morrison, I find myself struggling to find adequate words. You and your people saved 30,000 lives today. You saved my entire species from extinction." Morrison made a small gesture with his shoulders that seemed to dismiss the importance of what he'd done. We were in the neighborhood and saw people who needed help. Besides, the Galactic Council Charter is pretty clear about the responsibility to protect refugees. We might be new members of the galactic community, but we try to follow the established rules. The rules don't require anyone to face impossible odds, Thalas said. You risked everything for complete strangers. Commander Hayes stepped forward, her expression serious. The odds weren't quite as impossible as they appeared, Commander. We've been tracking the Krell for 3 weeks now, studying their tactics and combat patterns. They're aggressive and have superior firepower, but they're also predictable. Once we understood how they think and fight, we knew we could hold them long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Ensign Grant had moved to examine a damaged section of bulkhead near the airlock, running his scanning device over the scorched metal. Sir, their weapons technology is definitely more advanced than ours, he reported to Morrison. These energy signatures are impressive, but their defensive doctrine seems outdated. They rely too heavily on energy shields and not enough on armor redundancy and damage control systems. A mistake we learned not to make, Morrison said. Human ships are built to take punishment and keep fighting. We come from a challenging neighborhood back in our home system, Commander. Lots of asteroids, dangerous radiation zones, extreme temperature variations. We learned early on to build things that can survive harsh conditions. Thalas gestured toward the viewing port, where the human fleet had taken up protective positions around the Vakrine flotilla. Your Admiral Cole mentioned a 5th fleet. Forgive my curiosity, but how extensive are humanity's military forces? Morrison exchanged a quick glance with Hayes before answering. That's classified military information, Commander, and I'm not authorized to share specific numbers. But I can tell you that Earth takes the security of this sector very seriously. We have enough ships and personnel to make sure the Krell think very carefully before they try something like this again. But why? Thalas asked, the question that had been bothering him since the humans first appeared. Why commit so many resources to help a species you've never even met before? We can offer you nothing in return. We're refugees with no homes, no territory, no wealth. What do you gain from this? Morrison's expression became more serious. He walked over to the viewing port and looked out at the damaged Vakrine ships floating in space. Because somebody has to, Commander. The galaxy is an enormous place, and there will always be aggressors like the Krell who believe might makes right, who think they can take whatever they want from whoever is too weak to stop them. He turned back to face Thalas. Humanity spent a very long time fighting amongst ourselves back on Earth. Thousands of years of wars and conflicts and suffering. We learned some extremely hard lessons about what happens when good people stand by and do nothing in the face of injustice. When people with the power to help choose not to act because it's not their problem or not their responsibility. Hayes nodded in agreement. We're not making that mistake out here among the stars, Commander. We refuse to become the kind of species that watches others suffer and does nothing. Thalas felt something shift inside him. These humans, so young and new to the galactic community, understood something that many older species seem to have forgotten. Power meant nothing without the willingness to use it for good. Technology meant nothing without compassion. Your species is remarkable, Thalas said quietly. In all my years, I have never encountered such fierce dedication to protecting others. Morrison smiled. We're not perfect, Commander. We make plenty of mistakes and we have our own problems to work through, but we try to do the right thing when we can. And right now, the right thing is making sure you and your people get somewhere safe. Grant finished his examination of the bulkhead and rejoined the group. Captain, the damage to their ships is extensive. I recommend we send engineering teams over to assist with repairs. With our help, we can have their fleet ready for travel within 3 days. Make it happen, Morrison ordered. Coordinate with Commander Hayes and get our best people on it. These folks have been through enough. Thalas felt gratitude and something else he couldn't quite name. Hope, perhaps. For the first time in months, he felt genuine hope that his people might survive this nightmare. The repair work began immediately. Human engineering teams transferred over to the Vakrine ships, bringing equipment and supplies with them. Thalas watched as they moved through his flagship, their efficiency and expertise immediately apparent. They didn't waste time with long explanations or complicated protocols. They simply found problems and fixed them. One team was working on the damaged power distribution system that had been causing failures across multiple decks. The leader was a human woman named Lieutenant Amy Parker. She had her team crawl through access tunnels that most species would have found too cramped, replacing burned-out components and rerouting power flows. Your systems are well designed. Parker told Thalas when he checked on their progress. Very elegant and efficient, but you rely too much on primary systems without enough backup redundancy. When something fails, it cascades through connected systems. We can fix that. Another team worked on the damaged jump drive that had kept them stranded and vulnerable. They were led by a grizzled older human named Chief Dan Cooper. He studied the drive mechanism for hours before even touching it, making notes and diagrams, asking questions of the Vakrine engineers. Beautiful piece of work, Cooper said, running his hand along the drive housing. More sophisticated than our jump technology. But you damaged the field generator coils during emergency operation, probably pushed them too hard trying to escape. We can replace the burned sections and reinforce the rest. You'll be able to jump again, good as new. Thalas spent much of his time with Captain Morrison, learning about Earth and the strange species that had come to their rescue. Morrison was surprisingly open about human history, both the good and the bad. We almost destroyed ourselves a few times, Morrison admitted as they shared a meal in the Rangers' small dining facility. The food was simple but good, and Morrison insisted Thalas try something called coffee. It was a dark, bitter beverage that humans apparently consumed in large quantities. Nuclear weapons, environmental damage, diseases. We came very close to extinction more than once. But you survived, Thalas observed. We did, and we learned from our mistakes, though sometimes those lessons came at terrible cost. When we finally developed faster-than-light travel and made first contact with the Galactic Council, we were determined not to repeat the errors of our past. We wanted to be better, to prove that humanity could be a force for good in the galaxy. Some species must have been skeptical, Thalas said. From what you describe, humans have a violent history. Morrison nodded. Very skeptical. The council debated for months about whether to grant us full membership. Some species argued we were too aggressive, too warlike, too dangerous. They weren't entirely wrong. Humans can be aggressive when we need to be, but we channel that aggression toward protecting others now, not conquering them. Hayes joined them carrying a data tablet. Captain, I have the preliminary report on the Vakrine situation. The refugees include scientists, engineers, farmers, doctors, and skilled workers from dozens of different fields. Their colony worlds were primarily agricultural and light manufacturing. Good people who just wanted to live in peace. Morrison said quietly. What happened to them isn't right. Thalas appreciated the sentiment, but he had to face reality. Captain, we are grateful for everything you've done, but we cannot return to our worlds. The Krell control that entire sector now, and we have nowhere else to go. The Galactic Council's refugee protocols will place us in temporary camps while they search for a suitable world for resettlement. That process can take years, perhaps decades. Morrison and Hayes exchanged one of their meaningful glances, the kind that spoke of shared understanding without words. Then Morrison smiled. Actually, Commander, we have another option to discuss with you. He activated a holographic display showing a star system. A yellow sun with several planets, one of which was highlighted in green. This is the New Dakota system. It's a human colony, established about 30 years ago. The planet is classified as a garden world, very similar to Earth. Lots of open land suitable for agriculture. Currently, the population is only about 200,000 humans, mostly farmers and their families. Thalas studied the display. The planet looked beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents. I don't understand. Why are you showing me a human colony world? Because the colonial governor has already approved temporary settlement for your people, Hayes explained. You have 30,000 refugees who need homes. New Dakota has millions of square kilometers of unclaimed land. The colony is still in its early development phase and could benefit greatly from an influx of skilled workers. Thalas felt his throat tighten with emotion. You would share your world with us? It's not charity, Commander, Morrison said firmly. Your people have expertise in atmospheric engineering and agricultural development. The database shows that Vakrine colonies were among the most successful in the galaxy at terraforming and sustainable farming. New Dakota could use that knowledge. This would be a partnership, not a handout. The colonial government is offering full integration rights, Hayes continued. Your people would have the same legal status as human colonists. You could build your own communities or integrate with existing settlements, whichever you prefer. You would have representation in the Colonial Council and full access to all resources and opportunities. Thalas couldn't speak for a moment. He had been prepared for his people to spend years in refugee camps, dependent on the charity of others. waiting for some distant world that might never come. Instead, these humans were offering them a home. A real home with dignity and opportunity. Why? He finally managed to ask. Why would you do this for us? Morrison stood and walked to the viewing port. Outside, human and Vakreen engineers worked side by side on the damaged ships. Because we remember what it's like to be refugees, Commander. There was a time in human history when many of our people had to flee their homes because of war, or disaster, or persecution. We know the pain of losing everything. We know what it means to need help and hope that someone will care enough to offer it. He turned back to Thalos. And because we believe the galaxy is better when people work together. Humans and Vakreen. Learning from each other, building something new together. That's the kind of future we want to create. Thalos rose from his seat and extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Morrison took it firmly. Then on behalf of my people, Captain Morrison, I accept your generous offer. We will be honored to make New Dakota our new home. The journey to New Dakota took 3 weeks. The combined human and Vakreen fleet traveled together, jumping from system to system along established routes. Admiral Cole's Fifth Fleet maintained a protective escort the entire way, their ships forming a defensive perimeter around the refugee flotilla. Thalos used the time to prepare his people for what was coming. It wasn't easy. Many of the Vakreen were traumatized from months of running and fighting. They had lost family members, friends, entire communities. The idea of starting over on an alien world felt overwhelming. But slowly hope began to replace fear. The humans sent cultural liaisons to each Vakreen ship, people who could explain what life on New Dakota would be like. They shared videos of the colony, showing vast golden fields and small towns with friendly populations. They talked about the opportunities available, the land waiting to be developed, the future that could be built. Lieutenant Sarah Banks, the pilot Morrison had mentioned during the battle, volunteered to work with the Vakreen children. She organized virtual tours and games that taught them about Earth culture and human history. Thalos watched as Vakreen youngsters who hadn't smiled in months began to laugh and play again. Captain Morrison visited the flagship regularly, and he and Thalos developed a genuine friendship. They would sit together in the observation deck, drinking that bitter coffee beverage and talking about everything from military tactics to philosophy. Your people fought well during the battle, Thalos said during one of these conversations. But I'm still amazed by how you coordinate your ships. The level of tactical integration was extraordinary. Morrison smiled. That's one area where humanity might actually be ahead of most galactic species. We developed advanced computer networking and artificial intelligence while we were still confined to our own solar system. By the time we achieved faster-than-light travel, our tactical networks were already highly sophisticated. Every ship in a human fleet shares sensor data, targeting information and strategic updates in real time. It makes us much more effective than our numbers would suggest. The Krell had superior numbers and superior weapons, Thalos observed, but you still defeated them. Because we fought as a team, Morrison replied. Each ship supporting the others, covering weaknesses and amplifying strengths. That's how humans have always survived. We're not the strongest species or the fastest or the smartest, but we work together better than anyone else. And that makes all the difference. On the final day of the journey, the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Dakota system. Thalos stood on his bridge, staring at the view screen as the planet came into view. It was beautiful, just as the hollows had shown. Blue and green and white, turning slowly against the black void of space. We're receiving a transmission from the surface, Vec reported. Governor Martin Lewis wants to address the fleet. Put it through, Thalos ordered. A human man appeared on the screen, middle-aged with sun-weathered skin and a warm smile. Welcome to New Dakota, Commander Thalos and the Vakreen people. We've been preparing for your arrival. Landing zones have been established, temporary housing is ready, and our people are eager to meet you. This is your home now. We hope you'll be happy here. Thalos felt tears in his eyes. Thank you, Governor. Thank you all. We are deeply grateful for this chance to start again. The landing process took 2 days. The Vakreen ships descended one by one, touching down in designated areas spread across a large continent. Human volunteers were waiting at each site with supplies, equipment, and welcome committees. Thalos's ship was among the last to land. When he finally stepped off the ramp and felt solid ground beneath his feet for the first time in months, he almost fell to his knees. Morrison was there to steady him, along with Hayes and several other human officers. Welcome home, Commander, Morrison said quietly. They walked together through the landing zone. Thalas saw Vakreen families emerging from the ships, looking around with wonder and cautious hope. Human colonists approached them with smiles and gestures of friendship. Children from both species began playing together almost immediately, their laughter carrying across the field. In the distance, Thalas could see the beginnings of a new settlement. Temporary structures for now, but with the promise of something permanent, something lasting. A future his people could build with their own hands in partnership with these remarkable humans. "We will never forget what you did for us," Thalas told Morrison. "The Vakreen owe humanity a debt that can never be fully repaid." Morrison shook his head. "You don't owe us anything, Commander. But if you want to repay us, then build a good life here. Teach us what you know, share your culture and your knowledge. Help us make New Dakota a place where both our species can thrive. That's all the payment we need." Over the following months, the Vakreen and human colonists worked together to expand the settlements. Vakreen atmospheric engineers helped optimize the terraforming systems, increasing agricultural output by 30%. Human construction crews and Vakreen designers collaborated on new building projects that blended both architectural styles. Scientists from both species shared research and made discoveries that neither could have achieved alone. The Krell never returned to threaten the sector. Word had spread through the galaxy about what happened when they attacked refugees under human protection. Other aggressive species took note and adjusted their behavior accordingly. Humanity's reputation as fierce protectors of the innocent became known throughout the stars. Admiral Cole's Fifth Fleet maintained a permanent presence in the region. The human military established a base on New Dakota's moon, both as a defensive position and a symbol of their commitment to protecting their new Vakreen friends. Thalas eventually retired from his position as fleet commander. He became an advisor to the colonial government, helping bridge the gap between human and Vakreen cultures. He married a Vakreen woman named Kella, who worked as a teacher, and they built a small home on the edge of one of the settlements, with views of golden fields stretching to the horizon. He kept in touch with Morrison, who was promoted to admiral a few years later. They exchanged messages regularly, sharing news and stories and occasionally arguing about military tactics over video calls. On the 5th anniversary of the Vakreen arrival on New Dakota, the colonial government held a celebration. Thousands of humans and Vakreen gathered together to mark the occasion. Governor Lewis gave a speech about friendship and cooperation. Kella's students performed a musical piece that combined human and Vakreen instruments in beautiful harmony. Thalas stood with Morrison, watching the celebration from a small hill overlooking the main settlement. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "Your people saved us," Thalas said quietly. "But more than that, you gave us hope. You showed us that even in the darkest times there are those who will stand against the darkness." Morrison smiled. "And you showed us that our ideals mean something, that the principles we try to live by actually matter. Working together, humans and Vakreen, we've built something special here. Something worth protecting." They stood in comfortable silence watching the celebration below. Two species from different worlds, brought together by tragedy and forged into friendship through shared hardship. The future stretched before them, full of possibility and promise. And in the vast darkness of space above them, human ships maintained their eternal watch, ready to defend those who could not defend themselves. Ready to stand between the innocent and those who would do them harm. Ready to prove again and again that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons or its technology, but its refusal to abandon those in need. The stars looked warm and welcoming now, full of hope instead of fear. And on the planet below, two species built their future together one day at a time.